Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my mid-month October 2022 Am Reading check-in. This is my first Am Reading video of the month. I am far later into the month than I would have hoped to have been, and I've read far less than I would have hoped to at this point of the month, given the TBR I set for myself, but I guess angsting about that won't help too much. I'll just try to move forward with more speed, for the rest of the month maybe, or at least for the time being, share what I have been reading. And in fact, I feel like I should start with my technically end of September reading, or that I technically finished in early October, but started in September. And as always, I have posted my literary newsletter, my monthly literary newsletter on my blog, where I have snippets from the Goodreads reviews of all the books I read, a book pick, my favorite book quote, or of my favorite book quote, and all that sort of goody stuff, literary news that caught my fancy, and etc., etc. So I have that linked down below. There is only one book that I have included in my September newsletter, September reading, that I haven't talked about at all on this channel, at least in terms of reading and reviewing it, and that is A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, which is a recent science fiction release. It's one of my sort of front list science fiction releases that I wanted to get to this year, and indeed I have. And it is the second Monk and Robot book, where we are following the monk Dex and the robot Moscap as they are traversing the land of Panga and discovering what it is that both humans and robots need in this seeming utopia that they live in. It's a very agrarian sort of society, a very communal-based society, mostly pretty peaceful, although they do run into some groups, or at least one particular group of people that are a little more skittish about robots and that sort of thing. So that's perhaps the most sense of overt conflict in this book, but it's really much more of a introspective book about what it is to need things. And of course we start with the topical needs, like Moscap is going to human civilizations and asking, what do you need? And they're ultimately, the first thing you think of is, oh, I need help, with this house project, this construction project, or, math homework, or that sort of thing. And then as Moscap and Dex continue to travel, and particularly when they meet Dex's family, and we get into their relationships and so forth with their family, it gets more into deeper sort of psychological or philosophical issues of what one needs. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting sort of things in this book. There's these chapters where they go from place to place. It kind of reminds me of the first book I read for Sci-Fi September that was sort of epistolary in nature, where the group of people on this planet would go from place to place. I feel like this one I liked a little more, that the characters had a little more heart to them. Although at the same time, I feel like maybe one of my criticisms of this novella is it feels like the middle of a novel. It feels like that maybe Becky Chambers took what should have been a conventional novel and is splitting it into, I assume, 3 books and 3 novellas. Because this one, in a way, I feel like it didn't grab me as much as the first Monk and Robot book, because, there wasn't as much setup, and you're kind of in the middle of it. And we're following the exact same characters that are they're basically on the same journey, or, very connected to the journey from the first book. So I really feel like that these aren't separate novellas so far. I mean, maybe the third one will be different, or maybe this will give Chambers an opportunity to continue to write in the Monk and Robot series beyond, I guess, Dex and Moscap and this particular, what do humans need journey that they're going on. But it feels like the final book, where they're headed to the city and are having to think about, okay, our journey is going to come to an end, or how are we going to conclude things? It feels like a conclusion to me. That's my major assumption right now. But yeah, overall, still, I did enjoy this book. Next, I will move on to the next short story of sorts in this collection of Dorothy Parker's complete works, which I've been reading from one short story per Am Reading video since last May. Although technically I, as of last month, completed the short stories portion of this book, you know, that went from her early career to the end of her career, and now we're on to sketches that she wrote all early in her career. So what I have here that she published in the Ladies' Home Journal in 1920 was called The Tuesday Club, and it really is these sketches of these characters that belong to this Tuesday Club. They're all women, so it has to be some sort of feminine-inspired club, and she's just telling us who these people are, basically, like in a few paragraphs of, like, you know, quirky details about, you know, people who are very assured of their own opinions, or people who have trouble, like, in courtship and that sort of thing, and blah, blah, blah. You know, it was interesting, but it felt like a writing exercise, and it lacked all of the fun, witty dialogue that I like the most in Dorothy Parker's writing. So I feel like I see some strength in it, that, like, oh, you know, she can understand character, and, like, you know, this could aid her in her actual short stories, but it's basically a writing exercise. I don't know, maybe a gossip column about people who either aren't real or maybe they were real. I assume not, though. But it was interesting, an interesting way to start off. I wonder what the next sketch will be like. I'll get to it next week. I've only finished one book, alas, officially in October so far. Not so happy about that, but the book is Atomic Anna by Rachel Berenbaum, which I technically put on my historical fiction published this year I wanted to get to, although historical is a little bit of quotation marks. It also has science fiction elements. Anyway, this is the story of a Russian Soviet family that starts technically in 1986 with the reactor failure at Chernobyl, and we're following Anna, who was a major engineer on that project. And when the you know, the reactor goes, she is thrust into a time warp of thing, and is brought to 1992 in this remote scientific facility, where she runs into her daughter, her estranged daughter Molly, who is dying of a gunshot wound, and says, well, guess what, time travel works, you know, and also save my daughter, you know, so, you know, save your granddaughter, my daughter, you know, you have to set things right that went wrong sometime in the next, you know, 6 years. And then she's brought back to 1986, because I think the way this time travel works is that she can only, you know, travel to a new place for 2 hours. So she is brought back to 1986, and she had been working on sort of time travel theories before. It all sort of, you know, ties into Einstein and gravity and electromagnetism stuff. Berenbaum talked a lot about Einstein and the theory of relativity in her first book as well, which also took place in Russia at the end of the imperial reign. But anyway, this one, of course, takes place during the USSR, and we have various timelines. We have Anna in, I guess, the present from 1986 to 1992, working on her time machine, and, you know, she wants to save everyone at Chernobyl and also, you know, stop running for her own life because she thinks she's going to get blamed for everything. And then she wants to save her family, and so then other timelines in the book track her daughter and her granddaughter. They are both growing up in America, actually. Anna's daughter, she gave to some friends, and they snuck out of the country, and Molly grew up as the adopted daughter of these two very closed-off people. They were very, you know, scarred by their experiences in the USSR, and Molly herself, she has this whirlwind romance, you know, she kind of, you know, wants to, has some, you know, wild rebellion period. She has a romance with a dangerous guy. She gets hooked on drugs. She has a child of her own. Part of the saving her daughter Reza thing has to do with sort of tampering a little bit with Reza's upbringing, and Reza, through Molly, well, Anna's time travel, ends up living with her grandparents, and like her grandmother, her birth grandmother, I should say, she is a bit of a science prodigy. So Anna starts, with her daughter Molly's help, starts you know, sending information back in time to raise it, to sort of help them figure out the time machine. And they sent it back through this comic book strip that Molly thought up called Atomic Anna, which is where the title comes from. So I think there's a lot of interesting, rich stuff in here. There is a big Jewish theme. This is a Jewish family. They face anti-Semitism and such from the Soviets, and Molly's adoptive parents in America start to observe more ritual like Shabbat and that sort of thing. And in fact, Berenbaum starts each part of her novel out with selections from Pirkei Avot, which is the wisdom of the fathers, which was a big rabbinical text basically of ethics. And here I think it's basically put in the book to sort of guide Anna on what really is less about time travel and more of a psychological and philosophical journey about who you are and what you can do, you know, to I guess, be the best you can be and create a better world. I mean, Anna's I guess in a way, a pretty fascinating character. She's somebody who, like the title might suggest, has worked on the atom bomb and at Chernobyl, so, you know, with nuclear science, and so she was responsible for weapons of mass destruction. And so what does that mean about, like, who you are? And that's something she deals with in her storyline. And she also has a past with her own mother, who was arrested during the Russian Revolution, or the Bolshevik Revolution. So I feel like there was a lot in here that is kind of character rich in a way, like you know, for a novel that relies so much on this big plot point of the time jumps and everything and changing time. There was some character depth. But I also feel like everything in the character arcs happened way too quickly, or maybe were too dependent on the plot, I guess, and that kind of grated with me a little bit. Or maybe it's even Berenbaum's writing, which I also felt like with her first novel, which I read earlier this year, that maybe it's just a little too pedestrian for my tastes. Maybe I'm too snobby for it. I feel like there was something here and that I was invested when I was reading it, although I did read it pretty slowly. I don't know. It didn't all come together for me in a way, although I think I was moved overall, I suppose. But, you know, the part of me that, maybe there's a part of me that is too stratified with genres. Like, you know, technically it's a science fiction time travel, time machine novel, but it really isn't. But the part of me that loves science fiction is like, well, how does that world building really work? I mean, and like, it's just hard to look time travel too, you know, closely in the face, just because of, you know, how much could be altered by making an impact in the past, I suppose. I don't know. Or the whole idea even of one person being able to stop Chernobyl, although technically I don't think Berenbaum goes too far down that road, but that's a little too facile for me too, that one person could stop it. The family stuff is certainly more compelling to everybody involved in this, but so yeah, I mean, you know, as in terms of science fiction, it's not a science fiction novel. In terms of a character-driven novel, there was so much plot that I wish that there was more time for the characters to breathe. And it's not really a historical novel, I suppose, because it's much more about the family and their own issues than what was actually going on in the USSR. And in fact, I guess that's another one of my quibbles, is that I just felt like we were really fleetingly going through that, and I was a little confused about when, like, Anna changed her mind on the USSR. There just wasn't enough nuance, I think, in all of that. So I have my mixed feelings, but I still, I guess, I feel like, you know, I quibble so much, and I guess that's part of what BookTube could be all about. Like, you know, you come on here to ramble about books somehow or other. But at the same time, I do feel like I really enjoyed it as well. So yeah, that's where I stand with this one. Sticking with front list releases here and books I want to get to before the end of the year, this is The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri, which is very directly a fantasy novel for my science fiction and fantasy lists. I am about 75% through the audiobook, so huzzah. And I think it's been growing on me with time. Well, it's actually the second book of a series, so I liked the first book enough that I wanted to continue, although I don't feel like I liked it as much as a lot of other people. I don't know. But anyway, it's based off of Indian, subcontinent India, myths and legends, and we are following two main characters. Malini, who is a wannabe empress who wants to usurp her brother's crown and feels entitled to it because, well, he's a bit of a despot, and also she's had some supernatural experiences, I think, unless I'm misremembering the first book and maybe it's a bunch of propaganda, but she feels very, you know, sure about her claim and is otherwise a relatively entitled character, but not as bad as her relatively one-dimensional brother. And then her lover happens to be a woman named Priya, who is a priestess of a land that, in fact, Malini's empire has conquered. So there's some, you know, iffy blood there. And as of the last book, I think, actually, that land, Ahiranya, won a bit of independence from Parajapvitmana. Oh boy, I'm sorry for the stumbling, but that's the empire major land. I guess that's where their seat is. So at the beginning of this book, Priya is a high priestess who is working with other people to sort of, you know, rule over their own land for the first time in a long while. But then she is ultimately called to help Malini with this war against her brother that has some supernatural elements that Priya could help with. And so it took me a little while in the beginning, I think, because I was, you know, I'd forgotten names and associations and that sort of stuff. But, you know, I gotta say by the end of it, or, you know, by 75% through, I feel like I'm much more, like, on board. Like, okay, I remember who this person is. I know who that person is. I know what's going on over here. I know what's going on over there. And I'm enjoying it. You know, the brother is one-dimensional, although kind of fun in that one-dimensional way, but still not, you know, not the most compelling villain, because one-dimensional. But on the other side of things, the Ahiranya people are dealing with this supernatural threat, which is a little more complicated, so I like that as well. And I like the relationship between the two women. I feel like I like Malini better in this book than the last one, which might speak to character development in a way that she is less brash and entitled, and in fact she's more interesting to follow because she has to sort of maintain this political calmness with warring factions among her group of you know, people fighting for her. And Priya's sort of the more brash one now. Although I do love the world building on both ends, that there's, you know, complications with different factions on both with the Ahiranya people and then with Malini's army. It's only her brother's people that are, you know, one-dimensionally kind of boring, but fun in a dramatic way. And now I'm repeating myself, but yeah, that's where I am with that one right now. I'm expecting to finish it within the next couple of days. And finally, I just started this book, Playing with Fire by Tess Gerritsen, which was my page 112 pick for the month, which was one of my recent videos that I will link down below. And yeah, I'm a little under 100 pages into it so far, but it is flowing pretty well. This is a dual timeline story. We have a modern day story which takes place with this violinist, an American violinist who was invited to Rome to play with her quartet, and as she's leaving she comes into this, you know, Roman bookstore, and she finds this decrepit looking book with an intriguing piece of music stuck inside it and feels like she's called to it. And she brings it home and is starting to really try to play this complicated piece on her violin. But scary things are starting to happen whenever she plays this piece of music. Her daughter seems to be engaging in these acts of violence, her 3-year-old daughter. And so it's really kind of creepy in a way, like, you know, what is with this music? Is it like calling the underworld up or something? What is happening? But then we go back into the past where I feel like we're getting an understanding of where this music comes from. It's not supernatural, at least not yet. We are in Venice in 1938 following a young violinist named Lorenzo, who is a bit of a prodigy, and he is crafting this music, and he's doing this this duet with his grandfather's patron, his granddaughter. That's happening as well. And meanwhile, of course, Mussolini is putting in anti-Jewish race laws, and Lorenzo and his family are Jewish. So things are starting to heat up for them, but a lot of people are still in a bit of denial about how bad it's really going to get at this point. And it's reminding me, in fact, of another book club book I read with my mom and auntie's book club a couple of months ago, Lisa Scottolini's book. I'm forgetting the name right now, but it took place in Rome, but it's kind of similarly following Jewish fascists, in fact, a Jewish fascist family that's slow on the uptake of, oh my gosh, you know, things are getting really bad. So it's similar in that way, and also I think much like Scottolini, Gerritsen is mostly a genre writer, like a, you know, a thriller writer. This I think is in fact marketed as a thriller, so, you know, everything's kind of fast-paced and has that sort of sense of dread in a way over it. So yeah, it has similar vibes to it so far. Yeah, that's where I am with this one. I really hope I'll be finishing this very, very soon. I'll have to finish it very, very soon if I want to get through all the other books I want to this month, and this definitely has a very quick flow to it so far, so hopefully I will be reporting back next week. So that about covers it for me now. Halfway through the month, not much to show for myself, but hopefully have had interesting things to share. And I will be back on this channel in the next few days to do my next installment of my Would You Read It challenge, where I am looking back at the BookTube prize, because apparently I'm not ready to let that go yet either. The 2022 BookTube prize just ended a couple weeks ago, but now I'm going to go further back and use this tag to look at an old ballot from 2019 and read the first few paragraphs of each of the books on the ballot, discuss it with you, keep the BookTube prize spirit alive even though we're technically in the off-season, and hopefully get to try out some new books, at least the first few paragraphs of them, so stay tuned for that. I hope you all have had a great first half of October with reading and in other pursuits as well. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.